I'm going to dump that old hag in the mountains, my son-in-law whispered in my ear during the funeral of my husband, the company CEO. When I looked at him, he had an evil grin on his face. Now that the president has left, the company is finally mine. He had been vying for the presidency up until this point and had finally revealed his true nature. But life isn't that simple. My lovely son-in-law, the time was approaching when I would have to teach him a lesson. The battle has begun. Please lend me your strength. I cried out in my heart as I looked at my husband's altar. Sally is my name. I am a 55-year-old housewife, married for 30 years to my husband Andy. I met my husband as a co-worker, and we became friends, then lovers, before marrying and having our daughter, Marlene, a year later. My husband used to work for a construction company, but when he was 35, he decided to start his own company. I wanted to design, so I became a first-class architect, he says. I get a rush from seeing a client's vision come true. My husband told me with a twinkle in his eye that he had started a design firm. I wasn't sure if it would work because our daughter was only 4 years old at the time. But we were a team, and I was determined to support my husband. I decided to stand by my husband. Let us collaborate. I'm in on your dream. Fortunately, the company grew steadily, and my husband demonstrated that he was capable of running it. I was devoted to supporting him, and I have been doing so for the past 20 years. My husband then hired Stephen, who was working at an affiliated company. He, falling in love with my daughter, was an unexpected turn of events, but I thought I could trust Stephen, who worked so hard for my husband. In retrospect, this was a mistake. Stephen, my son-in-law, agreed with my husband's point of view and obediently supported my husband's as a company executive. My daughter, on the other hand, felt uneasy about his excessive words, possibly because of his excessive zeal for his work. Hey, Mom, sometimes I worry about something these days. What? Maybe it's because he's been drinking, but Stephen said, I wish that old man would just screw himself. I can increase the profitability of this company. What a horrible thing to say. That's awful. They say that when you're drunk, your true feelings come out. But I doubt he'd ever betray your father. Although my daughter's words lingered in my mind, I forced myself to believe Stephen was also thinking about the company. We had no way of knowing what his true intentions were at the time. A year ago, seemingly out of nowhere, something happened. My husband, Andy, who had always been in good health, began to look unwell and lost his appetite. He also frequently complained about back pain, so we decided to have him examined. The outcomes were disastrous. A serious disease was discovered, which couldn't be treated, and he didn't have much time to live. Only my daughter's family and I knew this. We were all concerned about our future, but Stephen, who was with us at the time, reassured us. I hope Andy gets better. The company will be fine. You can leave everything to me with confidence. Stephen's words were oddly assuring. Although I assumed these words were meant to reassure us, the triumphant look on his face filled me with unease. Stephen's attitudes gradually got worse from there. According to one of my husband's longtime subordinates, he had started speaking down to those around him, and other employees were having a bad time. Some of them left the company because they couldn't stand Stephen's outbursts, and others lost motivation to work. Stephen, you're very dedicated to your work, I told him, thinking he might be overwhelmed by the fact that he had to keep the company afloat. But could you please consider your employees' feelings as well? What? You're making big claims. You should just stay by your husband's side. He looks to be on the verge of dying at any moment, without interfering in my affairs. Nonetheless, Andy has carefully taken care of this business. You know, the company is almost mine now. You should be grateful that I, a wise man, have remained silent and followed this jerk of a president until now. When I heard this ear-splitting tirade, I couldn't believe it, and the anxiety I was feeling the other day grew even stronger. Stephen's words and actions have become worse with each passing day, and he has made comments that put employees under pressure. Employees who have been with the company since its inception had been doing what they had always done, obtaining contracts by repeatedly talking to clients about their needs and wants. This was my husband's policy, but he responded with a blunt remark. In this world, efficiency is everything. Don't be such a jerk. I'm going to fire you. Furthermore, he had switched to a method of sharing reports on a computer, which occasionally caused problems for the older employees. Can't you old people even use a computer correctly? Get out of here. You're stifling my progress. I don't want you to work for me. He'd yell at them, kick over the garbage cans, and make them pick up the paper scraps that were scattered around. After all, when our long-term business partners began to suffer as a result of the recession, we are not doing this for free, so we will no longer do business with you. He started destroying the trust that had been built over time. When my daughter, Marlene, asked for advice about him, I was at a loss for what to do. He's been treating Marlene like a servant lately. He would become enraged if she resisted even slightly. Who would marry you if you weren't the boss's daughter? Your personality and appearance are not my type. Marlene complained to me that Stephen had lost his kindness as he spat at her as if he was looking at something filthy. Mom, Stephen has changed. No, the Stephen we see now is the real Stephen. And we were duped. My daughter sobbed out of frustration. After hearing about Stephen's actions from his subordinate, my husband was also concerned about his employee. He summoned me to his bedside one day and asked for a favor. All right, I'll take care of it, so don't be concerned. I promised my husband something. More bad things happened a short time later. Despite his best efforts, my husband died within a year of being told he had little time to live. I couldn't stop crying at my husband's funeral, remembering how we shared similar values, had never argued, and had lived a happy life thanks to him. However, when we were listening to the priest's sermon, Stephen brought his face close to mine and whispered in my ear, I'm going to dispose of you in the mountain. I noticed that he had an evil smile when I looked at him. This was Stephen's true nature. He had been on the board of directors since my husband's hospitalization, and now that he was gone, he must have felt secure in his position as president. From now on, I can make the company do whatever I want. I could almost hear his thoughts. Stephen, who has taken the word for granted, has no idea what fate awaits him from now on. I'll be the one to put an end to this. It is now time for me to keep my promise to you. Give me your strength. I looked at my husband's coffin and confirmed my resolve. A shareholders' meeting was called following the funeral. Stephen, the director, arrived late and sat down on a chair in the center of the room with a thump, looking around at everyone. He was startled when he saw me sitting at the same table as him, and his eyes fluttered several times. Why the old hag? I could hear him mumble. I had to hold back my laughter. The next item on the agenda is the removal of Stephen from the board of directors, the moderator said. My son-in-law, who had not heard anything, became terrified. Hey, wait a minute. What are you on about? I didn't hear what you were saying. He tried to stand up so quickly that he almost fell off his chair, and everyone in the room laughed at Stephen's misfortune. In fact, my husband gave me a majority stake in his company several years ago. Whoever owns the most shares has a strong influence over a company. I had exercised that right by requesting that the board of directors call a shareholders meeting. Stephen was aware of the shareholders meeting, but he had no idea it was to discuss this dismissal. How can I be fired without a valid reason? I am the president's son-in-law. It appears that you have been very cold to the employees who have worked for us until now. This will cause the company to lose ground to the competition. That's why, you amateurs, you have no idea what you're talking about. I'm not saying we can't experiment with new approaches. I'm saying we should look after our business partners as well as our employees. The shareholders nodded their heads as they listened to me. They understood and agreed with Andy's ideas about the company. Stephen noticed this, raised his eyes, filling with rage, and yelled at me. Things like that won't lead to the company's profit. Oh, you work solely for your own benefit, not for the benefit of the company, don't you? I know the truth. What are you talking about? Stephen, you're completely out of line. Take a look at this. I held up the internal documents that my late husband had entrusted to me. in front of Stephen. Have you been misappropriating company funds for your own personal use? The room erupted at that point, and all eyes were drawn to Stephen. He was agitated, and there was a cold sweat on his brow. How did you find this? It was given to me by Andy. That man had a customer-first policy. But you denied it and attempted to change it, didn't you? That's why he wanted me to bring this up. Damn! It's not fair of you to be snooping around. The company cannot afford to have embezzlers on its payroll. So, who will be the next president? There's nobody else but me. Don't be concerned. My husband has requested that I take over. What? What nonsense are you on about? A novice hag cannot run a business. It's no surprise Stephen said that, because he knows nothing about me. Because the company was still small, it was customary for the company's executives to meet in a home conference room. At these meetings, I always sat next to my husband, the company's president, and voiced my opinions. My husband trusted me because I knew everything about the company's inner workings, even though I didn't let anyone know. However, I had always been in the know, and when my husband transferred the majority shares to me, I assumed that I would eventually pass them to our son-in-law. That would never happen anymore. I'm going to pretend it never happened, I said coldly. Then, realizing his predicament, he flipped out and cried to me, pleading for forgiveness. Please don't let me go. Please accept my apologies for all of my disrespect. I swear I will work for the company for the rest of my life. I'll even return the money I stole. Do you really believe you can get away with it? I intended to use the funds to start a new business. It was not for monetary gain. That's funny. You've given women luxury foreign cars, brand-name goods, and jewelry as gifts. It doesn't sound like you're ready to start a business. Anyway, do you really believe you can start a business with the money you stole? In any case, you've been fired. The cowardly Stephen now brought up the subject of my daughter. If you make me suffer, your little daughter will suffer as well. Is that what you're looking for? Marlene has decided to divorce you, and she should have packed her belongings and left by now. She expressed her dissatisfaction with you. Oh, no. Oh, and I've reported embezzlement to the police, so be ready. Stephen was later removed from the board of directors, and he was arrested and imprisoned for embezzlement. My daughter had abandoned him, leaving him to fend for himself. As the president of a company, I am busy every day, but I am working hard to grow the company my husband left me. I will continue to respect the employees who have served us for many years, and while I will implement new ideas, my philosophy of putting myself in the shoes of the customer will not change. My daughter, who is no longer stressed, greets me with a smile at home. She is still young, and her life is just getting started. I will keep a close eye on her future.